Hi guys, I'm live. I'm with Grappling Hearts. Today I've got Lachlan Giles with us. That's a pretty big deal for me. Lachlan, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it, and I'm really thankful that you were able to reschedule with me. For anyone
No
keeping,
worries.
yeah,
Thanks. Thanks for waking up at a crazy time to do this.
it's okay. I really like to have to talk to you, so you gotta do what you gotta do, right? So, Lachlan, I think the most obvious question I have for you right now is, what do you think worked in your favor as far as this past ADCC? You
Yep.
just murked a bunch of guys who were a lot bigger than you. Let's talk about that for a few minutes.
Yeah, like what worked in my favor there. I think probably the type of guard I was playing, I think was pretty important. I really tried to make sure I kept my feet in front of my opponent and played a very good distance management with my guard. And then the other thing was leg locks, using I guess a style that I thought my opponents were probably less familiar with, as opposed to the traditional sort of sweep pass, take the back, submit game, which they would all be quite familiar with. I think going for the heel hooks, and especially from 50-50, which seems to be a bit less common. So having a bit of a different approach there, plus that distance management, seemed to work well for me on the day. Very well, actually. So yeah.
That's awesome. Man, so just watching your instructionals and obviously you competing, you are just so knowledgeable with the leg game. How long have you been studying it, and what do you think first turned your attention to it?
Yeah, well, probably, I mean, since I started training like back 17 years ago, like I kind of I didn't follow the kind of IBJJF rules then. I just watched MMA, and heel hooks were a part of MMA, so I kind of they were involved in training, but I wouldn't say I had an actual system there. It was kind of just a you try to grab someone's heel and twist it, and that overworked. And then probably I think I started focus once I wanted to qualify for ADCC when I did my first qualifiers, which was some time ago, like over 10 years ago. I remember studying Ryan Hall's instructionals on it, just because he had a 50-50 instructional out, which had a bit on heel hooks. And I mean, to me, the obvious thing to do strategically in a tournament like ADCC was to work the thing that people tend not to be good at. And leg locks is something that I think was, even back then, was a huge hole, and it still is a hole in a lot of people's games. So um, it made a lot of sense for me to work for to focus on that back then. And then so after that ADCC trials, which I actually came second in the Asia Oceania trials, was about 10 years ago. So I kind of stopped doing leg locks and focus. I trained a lot in the gi and was focusing on IBJJF rule set. Um, and then it would have been about 7 years ago. So about 3 years later, I decided to enter another ADCC trials. So that kind of started my focus back on leg locks. And obviously, when I qualified that one. So that was for the ADCC, around 6 years ago. I qualified for that, and then I said, okay, now that I'm qualified, I need to keep this focus going. And at some point through that, I started noticing, my strategy then was still probably quite. I wouldn't say I had a great system then. Like I played a lot of single leg X, so my game was to go like shin to shin, single leg X, and sweep in IBJJF. So it was quite easy for me to adapt that into heel hooks and kind of go to outside ashi once I saw that was a thing, um, and start working that. But yeah, I guess like once I saw Eddie Cummings and Gary Tonnen and some of those guys in those early EBIs and what they were doing, I was like, oh, okay, they've got a bit. They seem to be a bit more positional focused before getting the submission. So that probably was when I really started to, I guess, try to copy what they were doing, and then eventually kind of finding my own variants of that and preferring the 50-50 kind of method. But yeah, that's so a slow, gradual one with probably like one of the major factors was seeing, Gary and Eddie using it in a high level like that was probably a big influence there.
That's something I always get a kick out of is hearing these high level guys saying, "Oh yeah, I watch this other high level guy," and it's like, wow, like just mind blows me. You had mentioned that you focused a lot in the gi there for a while. Do you think that might have
Yeah,
helped you in the long run, or do you think that maybe you have been fine either way?
yeah. Well, it's hard to say. I mean, yeah, definitely. I do think training the well. I don't think like I probably answer first. Do you have to train in the gi? I don't think you have to. Like I think you can train no gi and reach a high level and compete. Obviously, and there's people doing that as we speak. But I think in some parts of jiu-jitsu, having the gi on, it's almost like having training wheels. Like you've got, some parts of guard passing, for example, it's like you can grip onto the lapel and you can kind of climb your way through a guard pass. Or if you want to like work some of the back takes or something like a berimbolo, you've got like it's almost like a ladder you can climb in the gi that you don't have in no gi. And having those training wheels on and then taking them off at some point can sometimes be better than just going straight out in no gi. I think you can get discouraged a little easier if you find something's not working and it seems so far away. Whereas having something like the gi to kind of step it up like that helps. I mean, there's some things in the gi that are useless, like like playing a whole lapel guard system is not going to help you at all in any of your no gi. But I think a lot of the stuff I was working, I was working a lot of single leg X and some of the guard passing strategies and yeah, so a lot of that definitely helped me. But could I have done it just by doing no gi? I think so, but I would have had to have the right mindset and framework and I guess inspiration to follow the right techniques there. Does that
That
answer it? I hope I answered your question.
is, I've never heard anyone compare it to having training wheels for, and I really like that. It makes sense when you put it like that. Um, you have mentioned that it's been years since you started jiu-jitsu. Let's talk about what got you started and into it.
Yeah, I started after well, actually, I mean, I wanted to learn martial arts after watching a some sort of kung fu film. I think with Jet Li in it. I think I saw that, and I I was like, oh, it'd be nice to learn how to. I was in high school at the time. I was like, oh, it'd be cool to learn how to do what Jet Li was doing. So I think I started out at a kung fu school, and then at some point I came across you the videotapes of UFC one, and after watching that, I was like, okay, I've got to learn some grappling. And once I got involved in grappling, I think there was a little moment of denial where I wanted to believe that kung fu was the best and that jiu-jitsu wouldn't work. But after a while, I was like, okay, I got to try it. And once I actually went to a class, I kind of got stuck into jiu-jitsu, and here we are. So
That's cool. So I feel like a lot of people don't bring it to their attention enough. You've actually got like really really good wrestling. Let's talk about did you like wrestle in like high school or anything, or what got you so good at that?
I'm trying to have good wrestling. I suppose that's depends who I'm against, whether I'd say it was good. But yeah, I mean, we actually, it's really uncommon for someone in Australia to train wrestling. So there's basically no high school programs at all or anything like that, which is very disappointing actually. But we've got so most of our wrestling coaches we have here are people who have moved from somewhere international. Like I've trained, I've got a Uzbekistani coach actually who's very good. So he's managed to make it to the Olympics for Australia and so on. So and he's my weight too. So I've got some people who I've trained with, and I've probably spent a good 6 years wrestling, and I'd say that probably the last 4 years taking it reasonably seriously. Like in the lead up to ADCC, I was probably doing as much wrestling as I was jiu-jitsu because I thought that was an area which would potentially decide who wins the match or not. It didn't happen to be in my ADCC matches, but that was definitely something I was preparing for, and obviously something I have to prepare for the next ADCC as well.
That's good. And I really like how at the higher level you get, the more people are willing to admit that they can see what's coming, be it
Yeah.
wrestling or leg locks as like the next big thing. Um, so you had mentioned some like that in Australia it's not really common to have those programs. What are some big differences between jiu-jitsu, say in Australia versus like America or England that you might see?
For jiu-jitsu in particular,
Yes.
um, I suppose, I mean, probably there'd be a bigger difference between America or the US and Australia and England. I think Australia and the UK are probably quite similar. Like in that, well, even then, actually, we don't have any. Um, like the UK has got like Braulio Estima and a few and Hodger Gracie, for example, and
Yeah.
some of like the top known grapplers have moved there. We don't actually have that. We've got some good people from Brazil that have moved down, but no one that like is kind of a household name in the sport that's actually moved to Australia. So um, I think in some ways it can make it hard for people here to see it being achievable to rise to a higher level, because you don't have like a coach that's been right at the top before. But in other ways that can be, maybe that's better. I think sometimes not having that means you have to really focus on the way you're training and try to get everything, all your training methodology right, and sometimes that will get you better results than kind of following whatever your coach says, if that makes sense. So having to kind of look outside of that and study international competitors and try to approach it from in that way, I think has been well, certainly for me has been a big thing, and we're starting to see a few people from Australia doing really well. Obviously, Craig's done really well. Levi as well in the gi. So yeah, it's starting to pay off, even though they're both in the States at the moment. So maybe not.
But it doesn't count. They came from Australia, so they're still
That's
considered
right. Yeah.
Australian. Um, for you, what do you think? Like, obviously we had mentioned before that when you went to ADC and went against in that, or you went in the absolute bracket, what do you feel like? Obviously you said playing your guard helped a lot in your with your
Yeah.
style. Um, the bigger guys that you went against, do you feel like that's applicable not just ADCC and not just to guys of your caliber and your size, but also across the entire board, let's say for like women's jiu-jitsu? Like if a girl was to take your style and the way you moved them, that they would be able to apply that to their game as well?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think. I mean, I suppose there's. I have. I'd say. I mean, I would definitely be more flexible than average, but I don't think that's a make or break thing for my style. Like at how if I was more flexible than I am now, my style would work even better. And it's actually something I'm working on. And if I was less flexible, it would be a bit harder to implement my style, but it still does kind of scale up. I would say in general, from what I've generally noticed, like women tend to be slightly more flexible than men, just on average. So I'd say it's definitely a style that most of the women can use, and especially if you're rolling with most of the if you're rolling in mixed classes, then on average your training partners will probably be heavier than you just on average, I guess. But so having a style that I think I see that anyway, in at least at our gym, like most of the girls play a very kind of open guard, always got their feet in front style, and a lot of the bigger guys tend to play a more close range guard because there's not so many people much bigger than them that can squash them. So yeah, it does. It definitely scales up. I think probably the people who are going to use it less are actually the people in the heavier weight divisions. I think it's harder for them to play that particular type of guard unless they've got that baseline flexibility there.
I got you. So, about around what time in your career or what belt level did you start developing that style for yourself?
It was actually a lot more recent than than people think. So I was always playing inside leg position. Well, not always, but um, actually, it's a bit more complicated than what I'll say now. But um, I so I was always playing butterfly and single leg. I won't say always, but up until probably 2 years ago, maybe even about a year and a half ago, and then yeah, but I'll say 2 years because it was ADCC was now a year ago, wasn't it? Okay, yeah, and
Yeah.
then probably in the 1 year lead up to ADCC is when I really started changing to more favoring outside leg positioning, and working like K guard and De La Hiva and some of those positions. It is something that I'd say probably 7 or 8 years ago I was playing quite a lot of De La Hiva like for the Berimbolo, but um, it's a different. I suppose like in some ways it made me familiar with like how to use a De La Hiva hook and the angles that you need and so on, but the application of it was quite different. I was trying to use it to get to someone's back, whereas in ADCC I was using that, I guess, somewhat similar leg positioning, slightly different setups, but using that to get into 50-50 and try to get the heel hook. So I would say that definitely helps though. Just the past experience using that, it made it a lot easier to learn the new style that I focused on. But I mean, I think that's an interesting thing is that it probably took me 1 year to develop the style that got me that result at ADCC. Obviously, on the backdrop of actually having a long experience of training grappling, but those particular techniques and movements were quite new to my game.
That is wild. It's so cool how you all can evolve so quickly in such a short amount of time. It's wild to me. Um, so for I totally lost my train of thought.
That's all right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Um, when you first start making your come up, I guess, in a professional level, around what time did you start saying, "Hey, I can hang with these guys. I'm pretty good too." And then did you start realizing that you can make a career out of it?
Yeah, yeah, it was probably I think you always want to like start in layers. So I kind of like first I wanted to I was probably like a purple belt. I wanted to try to do well in the purple belt division in Australia, at the national level in Australia, and then eventually, when I was a brown belt, I went into a brown black belt division and actually had a really good result in that Abu Dhabi Pro trials in the gi. I came second, but that was in the brown black belt division, and that was probably when I first realized that I could maybe do well in the Australian level. I could potentially win the national level in Australia, which that at that time I probably would have said that that would have been that would have been a good career and I could leave it there. Um, but of course, once you achieve a goal like that, once I managed to win the Pan Pacs in Australia, you start looking internationally and trying to expand on that again. And I think it's always yeah, I suppose you just got to look for. I've always looked for just like as long as there's signs of improvement, you should be happy. Like you go against someone really good and they submit you, and then a year later you go against another person that's really good and you might just lose by points, or you feel like you got a bit closer, and then you might start losing by advantage. But you can kind of see some level of progress there. And so that's kind of how it's been for me. It wasn't like a sudden. Actually, I mean, I suppose ADCC that was my first. Actually, no, it wasn't. I had a IBJJF Nogi World's Middle, but it was ADCC was my first really good performance, I guess, internationally. So I felt like at training I'd improved a lot. So it was good to see that pay off in a competition result.
Totally. Okay, cool. For you. you're talking about internationally and whatnot. Of course, before all this, COVID happened and whatnot, you had made a few appearances over in like you had a I can't remember what event it was for, but you did a team thing
Yeah,
with
yeah,
yeah. Do you enjoy getting to come over here and do things like that, or for you, where it's such a long trip, do you feel like it's a once in a while type deal for you?
yeah. To be honest, it's like the flight is it is a pretty big process. I guess I don't mind it, but I usually want to. I don't like it when it's just a very short one. That was a very short trip. I think I flew in and arrived on a Friday, competed on the Saturday, and then flew back on the Monday or something. So that was like, you know,
Wow.
14-hour flight. Probably spent more time, about as much time in the airplane as I did actually competing. But that's correct. I mean, I just kind of I think they were paying. They had like a good amount of money for the competitors in that for the winning team, and I thought our team was pretty good. I was like, yeah, I think this will be worth worth going on this event. But yeah, usually I'd like to stay a bit long. Like if I'm going to the States, I'd like to make it like a 2 or 3 week trip, so it's not just like mostly spent on an aeroplane. But that's good. I enjoy that. I enjoy getting around, seeing different parts of the world, and so I mostly prefer if I get to see an area I haven't been to before, as opposed to I am a little bit sick of going to Los Angeles, to be honest.
I've heard a bunch of people say that. But for you, what's been your favorite place to go and compete at, and why would you say that?
Um, Favorite place to compete would be Japan, Tokyo. We had the ADCC trials there, but yeah,
Awesome.
Japan's just amazing as a city to visit, and there's I really like just it's just um the food and the culture and everything's really cool. So that's been the best so far.
That's awesome. Now, right now, is your focus primarily on getting yourself ready for, say, the next ADCC or trials, or is it also, are you trying to produce people to try to push them to go and, I want to say, follow in your footsteps in that light?
Yeah, probably a bit of both. With obviously preparing myself for ADCC is a huge focus. So I'm working on that, and we've got a bunch of um, obviously quite a few people that are taking grappling seriously that will be looking at trying to get in for into ADCC 2021. So the trials are supposed to be at the end of this year. So we'll see if they actually happen. But if they do, like trying to have people ready for that is a huge goal. If we can get a big team there, that'd be really good. It's always good to have more. Sometimes you go there and there's not many people from Australia actually there able to compete or even be spectate. So yeah, if we can get a big team going, that'd be awesome.
100%. Do
But
you have a group yet together that you're planning on taking there, or is it still kind of the works?
well, I suppose that it probably depends who wins the trials. I mean, obviously, Liv will come with me, but whether she does or doesn't qualify, but there's a bunch of people who I think have a good chance in their division at the trials. So I'm hoping that they get through because we can take it would be the dream would be to have one person in each weight division from our club, but that's it's not so easy to do. We'll see.
Right. For you, what are some big goals or aspirations that you may have for the rest of your career?
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting pretty old, so I'll probably this ADCC hopefully try to get gold. That would be amazing. So I'll work on that and work towards that, and then yeah, obviously after that, it's the team. Trying to produce, improve everyone's grappling throughout the team, and try and get more people to ADCC and get them to the level where they can medal. That would be amazing.
That's awesome. A while back when all this, COVID stuff started happening, I had seen that you and your wife really started drilling and rowing together quite a bit more. Do you think that helps you in the long run as far as being able to stay ready? And let's talk about maybe the benefits of having that training partner who was also quite knowledgeable.
Yeah, it does help and it doesn't into different. I mean, it's definitely better than not being able to train. There's certain areas that Liv and I can train really well. There's areas that because it's still a considerable weight difference. Like I'm still probably an extra 30% of her weight on top of her. So like some of the positions where like I'd be trying to do a pressure pass or something, I can't really do how I would in my own weight division. So there's some parts of my game that will suffer. Um, and there's probably some things I have to, the thing I have to be careful for myself is I have to be careful to try not to just get away with doing bad technique. Sometimes if you are a bit stronger, you can do bad technique and it can still work. So just trying to, make sure I try to match that for my own sake more so than for Liv. I think Liv improves regardless, but for my own sake, I can get worse if I use strength when I shouldn't. So that's kind of something to be careful of. But areas like leg locks, which I think strength matters very little for those sort of things, are really good to work. And some positions have been really good. Working out of bad positions with Liv on top and so on has been good. So yeah, we still I still think I improved and had some areas to improve on it during the COVID time, and yeah, however long it lasts.
That's awesome. I'm pretty sure I think we ran through all my questions, Lachlan. I really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else that you might want to add on that maybe others don't know about you?
Anything they don't know about me? Um, I don't know. What don't people know? I don't know what people know about me. Uh, I'm just freaked out since someone posted a my face on a Britney Spears thing. That's so I have no idea what people know about me, but that wasn't me.
Internet's wild, dude. Um, is there anyone you want to give a shout out to before we head off?
I mean, actually, I suppose everyone from Absolute MMA, anyone from our team that's watching, looking forward to when it's eventually we get back to normal. And I suppose just the jiu-jitsu community. It's obviously a pretty tough time for the jiu-jitsu world, but I think soon enough it'll be back to normal. I don't know when that is, but it'll get there.
Soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Lachlan. Before we sign off, I'm going to say a thank you to our sponsors, Grappling Hearts and BTG Coffee. If you guys get a chance, check them out. Lachlan, again, I really appreciate you coming on here.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.